What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's episode, we are going to check out our first MIDI bass plugin. That's right, we are going to be taking a look at Ample Sounds Ample Bass 2 Lite edition, which is free. And I'm going to play the demo track here in a second, and I'm going to alternate between the free MIDI bass and the actual bass that I recorded with my Schecter 5 string that you've seen a bunch of times before. So let's roll the demo, and you tell me if you can tell which bass track is real or MIDI. And there you have it, our nice little classic rock demo, something simple and easy to program bass to. So let's jump into the Logic session and see if you could figure out which bass was real or MIDI. So here we are in Logic, and I do have the Ample Bass plugin up here, so this is what it looks like. You've got the keyboard down here, some articulations and things, some basic settings. You got like the fret buzz, accent noise, fret sound toggle, pretty basic stuff. Very minimal settings. And then you do have this settings section, which is more for the plugin as a whole. So we'll dive into that a little more in a second. But here is our session, pretty straightforward. As I mentioned in my last video, I like to keep everything minimal and organized in more or less the same way so that when I'm recording, I know where stuff is. So first up, let's go through these guitars, which is Neural ESP SLO 100 plugin. Pretty straightforward. So Neural ESP into Pro Q3. Sounds really good, and I'm using the stock impulse on that. So the speaker section, this is just the 57. Nothing custom, nothing fancy, no GGD, aftermarket stuff here. And I think a lot of people overcomplicate guitar. So I try to point out how, fairly minimal the processing I do is for what it's worth. Then we have a little lead section, which is Gojira into Soundtoys Microshift, which is a neat plugin if you're not familiar. And then we have our bass tracks, which we'll get into in a second. GGD Aggressive Rock, which I really like this kit. I'm surprised I don't use it more. that's enough of that. And then we've got some, sound effects kind of things. And we have our bass tracks, which is the start of what we're here to talk about today. So as you can tell, I have the actual bass I recorded with my Schecter 5 string that you've seen a bunch of times in other videos. And then we have the Ample Bass, which is the plugin again, as I showed before. And this is free. I'm sure I mentioned that at least once already. And one nice feature that it has, which I was a little surprised free, it does have a couple extra tunings. So you can actually move these tuning pegs and you can go down one step. So I have this in D standard, which is of course what I played the guitars and stuff into, so I didn't have to pitch shift it, which is a nice touch. Now I had originally programmed reprogrammed the entire bass part, because that was originally how I was going to do this video, is just play that as the bass track. But then I thought I would do it as a comparison like I've done with some of the MIDI drums. So I recorded the actual bass and then alternate them, as you can see here. And both bass tracks are going through parallax, some different settings that I normally do, into STL Tones Control Hub. Again, different settings that I normally do. And then these should be more or less the same. I tried to match the sounds as close as I could, but with, them being different instruments, the DI sound is of course going to be different. So they do sound different a bit. And now let's play these without any processing. So this is the bass DI and ample sound, or the ample bass straight out of the plugin. So that little section there, I think, is a really neat example. It has the little scratchy sounds like I did on the guitar in the bass track. And you can tell it's got like some of the hand motion. So as far as a free MIDI bass plugin goes, this is the only one I've tried so far, but really impressive. I think it certainly sets the bar a little higher than you would expect for something that's free. Now, there are a ton of MIDI bass plugins out there in general nowadays. GGD, Submission Audio, Solemn Tones, just a couple off the top of my head. And of course, Ample Sounds has some other paid bass libraries as well. So I've not tried any of those. This is my entire experience with MIDI bass. I will say, I think playing the bass was a lot more time efficient, especially because in my workflow, I do either guitars or drums first. In this case, I did the drums first and then the guitar. And so by the time I record bass, which is almost always last, I've really got a feel for the groove and the song and, the parts. So I can record bass in like one take, maybe two, and then do a punch in or two if needed. But ultimately, I think the real benefit to having a MIDI bass is going to be similar to having MIDI drums, which obviously I use all the time. And that is when you do not have a practical way to do the real thing. So with drums, this is an obvious one. Drum kits are big, loud, and then to record them, you need a bunch of mics and a good room setup. And it's just not, accessible to everyone. I do think bass is a lot more accessible. And I know for a long time, I didn't have a bass. So I had a lot of demos where I would record on the guitar, root notes, and then pitch shift it down, which never sounds good. And had I known that they were bass plugins like this out there, I guess it just never really occurred to me, because I thought, just get a bass. But I probably would have looked for something like this and would have been very happy with it. I think comparing these, especially in the mix, it's very hard to tell if, which is which. And some, like the Dingwall ones, I think are a little more robotic sounding. And that's kind of the nature of MIDI. Obviously, you can program it probably better than I did here. This wasn't too terrible, but it was more time efficient just to play the bass, like I said. But I was very surprised actually at how many features are in this for being free and how good it sounded, and especially with how close I could get them once I did the processing and EQ'd it a bit. So I think this is a great plugin, and I would definitely recommend it if you're someone who, you're a guitar player who doesn't have a bass, you don't want to learn bass, or if you just really prefer dialing things in MIDI so it's like perfectly on the grid, which is what I did in this example. I think this is a perfect case for, MIDI instruments because the bass line was all pretty much right on the grid, whereas some more technical metal things might be a little tougher to program, but where there's a will, there's a way. Not for me personally, I'm going to keep playing bass, but I think it is a great option for people who, like I said, either don't have a bass or don't want to learn bass or what have you. Definitely check it out. Link will be in the description. Let me know what you guys think of the demo and if you could tell which bass was which. And if you check it out, let me know your thoughts. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Really helps the channel. We are at 50 subscribers now, so thank you guys very much. And I will see you next time in another video. Take care.